The Atlanta Falcons defeated the Carolina Panthers 29-21. Atlanta improves to 6-7 on the year. They keep their playoff hopes alive. Meanwhile, Carolina with this loss falls to 5-8 on the year. And their playoff hopes, they're not over, but they take a dramatic downwards turn. And this season for Carolina has took a downwards turn, and things kind of look like they're starting to spiral out of control. Because Matt Rule recently got rid of former offensive coordinator Joe Brady, and there were a lot of people, myself included, who felt like Joe Brady was a scapegoat firing for Matt Rule. Now, Matt Rule signed a 7-year contract a while back when he first accepted the Carolina Panthers head coaching job. So he has a lot of years left. So I don't see him going anywhere for the time being. I still expect him to return to Carolina regardless of how this season goes. I expect him to be back next year in 2022. And the problem with Carolina, first of all, I think a lot of Panthers fans came into this season with playoff expectations. They expected to win 10 or 11 games. And I understand why, because when you look at this roster, there definitely is talent there. You got a lot of talent on defense, especially with the acquisitions of Stephon Gilmore, CJ Henderson. I can't wait for JC Horn to come back fully healthy. You got Brian Burns, one of the best up-and-coming young pass rushers in the game. You got Hassan Reddick. Like, there's a lot of talent on the defense for Carolina. And offensively, you got DJ Moore, you got Robbie Anderson. You have a lot of talent offensively when it comes to your skill positions. Even at running back, Chuba Hubbard is really solid despite the fact that Chris McCaffrey is injured, and he's been injured for pretty much the majority of the season, and he's been a stud. So there's a lot of talent with the Panthers. But where they're lacking at, their offensive line hasn't been good, and the quarterback play hasn't been good. Ever since they started out 3-0, things have been downhill ever since then. So for Carolina, there's still a lot of things that needs to be improved. I had Carolina going into this year as a borderline playoff team. I had them winning 7 or 8 games this year. I can't remember which one. I think it was 8 games. And this team, to me, looks like a borderline playoff team. Yes, they show flashes at times, especially when they blew out or defeated the Arizona Cardinals a couple of weeks ago. But they also have had some really bad games. And this Falcons game is a game that the Panthers could have won. You look at how Matt Rule and the Panthers have handled the quarterback situation this year. I haven't agreed with it. I feel like when you bring back Cam Newton, yes, that was a really good signing. I definitely would have brought back Cam Newton. You get him involved in the Arizona game, all right? Then the week after that, you start him with him learning a whole entirely new system, trying to get back into the speed and shape of the NFL game, and then you just start him a week later. I don't really think that was a good decision. You have a guy who, although he's in good shape, he's still trying to get back into the swing of things of the NFL game. Not only that, but he's learning a new system. I still would have waited 2 or 3 more weeks before I would have named Cam Newton the starting quarterback of the Panthers. Doesn't really know that much of the playbook. Still trying to get back into the flow of the game. Like, it didn't really make any sense why Cam Newton was named the starting quarterback for Carolina. And if you're going to start Cam Newton, you shouldn't bench him if he has stretches of bad play. You have to let Cam Newton figure things out. He's never going to get back into even being an above average starter if you don't let him get time to work out the growing pains. On top of that, with learning a new system at the same time and not playing in over the last couple of months prior to the Carolina Panthers signing him, he should have still been behind PJ Walker, and you still should have been putting him in the game in certain situations until he knows a good amount of the playbook to start him. I feel like the Panthers rushed to start Cam Newton. They rushed him. He should have never been starting. Then you keep pulling him and you keep playing musical chairs when he has stretches during the game, when he struggles, when you should just keep him in the game. Because I love PJ Walker. I love PJ Walker's story. But we know that PJ Walker coming in to replace Cam Newton isn't really going to do anything. It's not going to give you a spark. If anything, it's just going to set you back even further, because then you put another quarterback into the game. Then he has to get in rhythm. Then the wide receivers have to get in rhythm with a whole entirely different quarterback. Like, anytime you make a change at quarterback, the whole entire team offensively is affected, because then they have to adjust to whoever is calling the plays under center. So you ruin the rhythm every time you substitute in a new quarterback. And there was no reason for Cam Newton to get benched in this game. When Cam Newton got benched, the Panthers still were in the game. You only bench your quarterback when you're down multiple possessions. You don't do it early in the game. That just doesn't make any sense, because then you put PJ Walker back in, and what does he do the following series? He throws the interception. And then who comes back out the following drive? Cam Newton. You want the drive where Cam Newton could have used that drive to build some momentum and maybe get things back on track. But playing musical chairs at QB is just bad coaching. It's bad coaching. It's a panic move. When you made the decision to start with Cam Newton, you made the decision to commit to Cam Newton. You made the decision that Cam Newton was going to be our starter. So therefore, if Cam Newton has some stretches there in the game when he struggles, you have to roll with it. You have to let him play through it. That's the only way he's going to improve. That's the only way people get better. I don't really understand why Matt Rule in Carolina continues to play musical chairs at quarterback. We know PJ Walker isn't giving you much as a spark. It's a reason why you rushed Cam Newton into the starting role at quarterback. It's because you didn't feel like PJ Walker was good enough to win you games. So when you commit to a starting quarterback, you shouldn't be making these mid-game quarterback substitutions, unless it's from a strategy standpoint. But if it's not from a strategy standpoint or a mismatch standpoint, Cam Newton should be in the game. On top of that, Carolina still is in the playoff race. You can't be making these kinds of quarterback changes late in the season when you're in the middle of trying to get into the playoffs. You have to know your identity. You have to know who you are as a football team around this time of December. You have to have identity. You can't be going into week 15, week 16 with only a few remaining weeks left, still trying to figure out who you are and who your starting quarterback is. You have to have an idea of who your guy is and what your team is and play to that. It shouldn't be trying to figure out where our strengths and weaknesses are week 14. You should have already had that figured out around week 9. You should have already had this quarterback situation figured out as soon as you named Cam Newton the starter. So for Carolina, the problem for the Panthers is that this team simply wasn't ready to be a playoff caliber football team. This was a borderline playoff team. A borderline playoff team is a team that has talent, but they're not a complete team enough to make it to the playoffs. That's what Carolina is. And for Carolina, yes, Cam Newton hasn't played great, but at the same time, he's still trying to get into the flow of things. He's still trying to learn the playbook. And on top of that, the offensive line isn't helping him out. Cam Newton is up there in age. We know that Cam Newton isn't the same Cam Newton that he was when he won NFL MVP back in 2015. Therefore, when you have an older quarterback, he's not going to be able to hide your weaknesses like he once was able to in his prime. When you have an aging quarterback, you have to make sure he has all the pieces around him, from wide receiver to running back to a great defense to the guys blocking for him up front, to make sure that he's able to have success. You can't have an older quarterback and be like, hey man, we need you to carry us. Hey Cam, we need you to get us to the playoffs. Hey Cam, we need you to carry us offensively. You cannot do that. You can't. You can't ask Cam Newton to carry you, because he's not at that stage at this point in his career that he once was to be putting Carolina in the position for him to have to carry them. If anything, the Panthers should be helping out Cam Newton, not Cam Newton helping out Carolina. Cam Newton was brought in to bring stability and stable play out of the quarterback position, but how can you expect stable play out of the quarterback position when you can't even give the quarterback a stable pocket to throw? I'm just saying, man, for Carolina, there are some issues with this team that has to be figured out during this offseason. The Carolina Panthers can't continue to play musical chairs at the quarterback position. You ruin confidence, you ruin the momentum, you ruin the rhythm, you ruin the chemistry every time you do this musical chairs quarterback nonsense. Pick a quarterback and stick with him. If Cam Newton struggles in the game, let him struggle. Let him play through it. Because he gives you the best chance to win at quarterback. And although PJ Walker had one drive that almost put Carolina back in the game, it was too little too late. Cam Newton could have done the same thing. I don't really understand why you bring Cam Newton in if you're just going to continue to put him in and out. You start Cam Newton and you keep him in, and if he has some stretches during the games when he struggles, let him play through it. Because that's the only way he's going to get back into the flow of things. Like, Matt Rule should have never made the decision to start Cam Newton. Cam Newton should have still been on the bench learning for at least another week or two. He's still learning the playbook on the fly. So, of course, there's still going to be some stretches during the games when he goes cold. You just have to accept that. That's what happens when you trade for or sign the quarterback in the middle of the season. They have to learn the playbook during the middle of the season. You remember when the 49ers traded for Jimmy Garoppolo a couple of years back? Did Jimmy Garoppolo start right away? No. We didn't see Jimmy Garoppolo until the tail end of the season for the 49ers when he had a good grasp on the playbook. That's what a good coach does. He doesn't rush players in to save their season. You see, Matt Rule in Carolina, they signed Cam Newton. They saw the energy that Cam Newton brought. Then they had that big shocking win over Arizona when Cam Newton had a touchdown. And he had a pretty good performance in a few plays that he was in. So Matt Rule and them tried to eat off that momentum that Cam Newton brought back to the Carolina Panthers locker room, and they thought, hey, Cam Newton gives us the best chance to win right now. Let's just go ahead and ride with it. Instead, you should have been like, okay, Cam, you had a nice little game. We're going to continue to give you more plays, and we're going to increase the amount of plays that you're in that quarterback every single week until you're the starter. That's how it should have been. The Carolina Panthers and Matt Rule should have been slowly increasing Cam Newton's playing time game after game. The game against Arizona, he had a certain amount of plays. Next week, he should have had a little bit more plays. A week after that, more plays, eventually until he should be your starter. You have to work Cam Newton into the offense. You just don't insert him back in. You have to work him back in. That's what Carolina hasn't done. They haven't worked Cam Newton back in. They just said, okay, after 1 week, we're making you the starter. We hope that you can save our season. That's pretty much what Matt Rule did. Cam Newton was his last Hail Mary. That's why they brought him back. And I don't blame them for that. I blame them for how they have handled Cam Newton. If you're going to bench Cam Newton, then why make him the starter in the first place? You knew he was going to struggle because he doesn't know all the offense. I don't really understand, man, what Matt Rule is doing with this quarterback situation. But a lot of fans can scream, we need a quarterback, but it doesn't matter who you have under center if you don't have a good offensive line. So, Carolina, is this team a talented football team? Yes, they have a lot of good pieces, but they don't have the necessary pieces to make it to the playoffs. It's like a car. When you build a car needs a lot of pieces and a lot of components for it to start up. You just can't build a car and put the engine in without a battery and expect the car to work. You can't build a car and forget key components and expect the car to drive properly. You have to have the necessary components for that car to start up and get you from point A to point B. And for Carolina, they haven't had the necessary parts for Cam Newton to get this team into the playoffs. This team is a borderline playoff team. That's what I've been telling Panthers fans before the season started. When you're a borderline playoff team, it means that you have some pieces to make it to the playoffs, but you don't have enough necessary pieces to make it to the playoffs. That's why I had the Carolina Panthers as a borderline playoff team going into this season, because they had a couple of pieces, but they didn't have the complete full package for this to be a team that's ready to make it to the playoffs. So for Panthers fans, you kind of suffered from having too high of expectations for this team. Your expectations was playoff or bust. The expectations were to be competing for one of those remaining playoff spots. Year 3 should be playoffs. Year 2 should have just been around this time. We should be competing and being in the playoff race, which you still are despite this loss. So for Atlanta, you moved to 6-7, and Atlanta has been one of the more surprising teams of this year. Because I didn't expect Atlanta to be in the playoff race at this time of the year before the season started. I thought that Carolina was going to be in the situation that the Falcons are in. And the Falcons have the 3rd easiest schedule in the NFL to close out the season. So if they're able to at least win, 2 more games, you still put yourself in prime position to get one of those last remaining playoff spots. So for Atlanta, good win. Well fought, well played. I'm really impressed with what their first-year head coach is doing right now in Arthur Smith. I've been really impressed with how Atlanta has played all this year. And I don't think enough people are giving Arthur Smith enough credit for what he's done year 1 in Atlanta. Because not too many people had Atlanta even winning more than 4 games this year. And right now, they're 6-7 and are in the hunt to make it into the playoffs in the NFC playoff race right now. So it's just for Carolina fans, you just kind of suffered from having too much high expectations. Carolina made a lot of good moves in the offseason. I like the decision to draft J.C. Horn. I still feel like drafting J.C. Horn was the right decision, because even if you drafted Justin Fields or Mac Jones, I mean, you probably still would be in a similar situation that you are right now, because your offensive line isn't that good. And the running game hasn't really been there consistently like it needs to be when you have a young quarterback. So even if you drafted Justin Fields or Mac Jones, you probably would still be in a similar situation on offense. So you guys let me know how you guys feel about the Carolina Panthers down in the comment section down below.